You are listening to Grab Them by the Pod, a member of the ACE Podcast Network. Welcome back to Grab Them by the Pod. Thanks again for joining us. I am Kevin, along with Jesse, and it's been a while for our listeners. You know that we've been a little bit sporadic over the last few weeks, but now we're going to be back on track, and we've got lots to talk about. The more things change, the more things stay the same, but hey, that gives us lots of fodder. Ain't that right, Jesse?
It is. It's great to be back on a regular schedule. If I don't get this out once a week, I feel like I'm just bothering people on the street trying to talk to them about politics, because if I don't talk to you, it just has to get out in one way or another. Before we get into all the crazy stuff that's happened in the last week or two, I really wanted to point out, I talked to you about this a little offline, telling people that I want to try to read this book, Devil's Bargain. It's by Joshua Green. He works for Bloomberg Business. The reason I want to read this is that it's about Steve Bannon's rise to power and how he was involved with Trump's rise to power. Really, the reason I want to read it is that something flashed on my phone, and I'm going to try to put this nicely. In this book, apparently, Bannon says that Paul Ryan was a limped deed mother effer who was born in a petri dish at the Heritage Foundation. I go, well, if there's this good zingers like that in the book, I have to listen to it. It's going to be fantastic, or read it. It's going to be fantastic.
Well, it certainly sounds interesting. I might have to take a look at that myself. I don't really care for either of them, but hey, what's Bannon doing? I mean, we knew he was kind of out there, but this is pretty nuts.
Anything that proves he's as horrible a person as we all just assume he is will be a fun read, although it's fun until you realize the dude's working in the White House right now, and that's
he's running the country.
Yeah. So what we want to talk about is a lot has happened since our last episode, and specifically in the last 24 hours. But just to give a little background, since we were last here, they've been talking about the health care legislation. The Senate adopted the Cruz Amendment, which basically says that insurance carriers in different states can offer at least one plan that if they offer at least one plan that complies with the ACA regulations, they can have a lot of other plans out there that don't. Basically, they're going to be bad plans. And supposedly, they think it's going to save young people money because they can get these bare bone plans. Really, what's going to happen is it's going to screw older people. The vote on this was actually delayed. It was supposed to happen this week, but our boy John McCain is recovering from surgery. He's back home, and they were going to push it off to next week. None of this actually matters, though, because this stuff is all dead in the water. Last night, the GOP their bill just collapsed everywhere. Senators Moran and Lee announced they're not going to support it. In the past, we heard that Collins wasn't going to support it from Maine. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, and even Dean Heller from Nevada probably wasn't going to be supporting this. There are 52 members of the Republicans in the Senate, so they can have 2 no's and then have Pence break the vote. But if that's not going to happen, man, it's over, Johnny. I think they're in big, big trouble.
Well, you could see this coming, that things weren't looking good for the Republicans controlling the Senate, because John McCain's vote was needed just for procedural purposes to move forward with this. And since he wasn't going to be available, which, as reports are starting to come out, that the surgery was actually more of a big deal than first reported.
Oh, really?
Blood clot above the eye, that it might take a little longer. It's going to take longer than a week for him to recover back home in Arizona. So not quite sure when Senator McCain will be back. But yeah, that kind of set the wheels in motion that this was not something that was going to work. And then certainly with more of the other Republicans jumping on board saying, look, we're not going to be able to support this, then that kind of made it dead in the water.
Now, I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but if you have to beg and plead for your caucus to get enough votes just so that it can pass with the vice president breaking a tie, maybe it's not the best legislation, and maybe they shouldn't be focusing on getting this passed and should instead be focusing, I don't know, getting a bill that actually won't kick 23, 24, 22 million, whatever the multi-million-dollar number of the current bill is. It's just a mess, and it looks like the American people might be saved, at least for the moment. They've got a temporary reprieve, if not a complete one.
Well, I don't have a statistic in front of me, and it'd be something worth looking into. But, how many times the vice president in history has had to cast a tie-breaking vote? And it would seem that that would be the way that many bills would pass through the United States Senate at present, with how divided it is, how these things are passing by the skin of their teeth because you get a vice presidential vote to break the tie. Now, certainly this is no mandate for the Republican Party. And oftentimes the current president has said, he believes that his election was a mandate, or that, things need to be done his way now. Well, if things are barely passing the Senate with vice presidential tie-breaking votes, and as divided as our country is, there is no mandate, Donald Trump.
This happened back when Cheney was VP. There was a 50-50 tie for a little bit. So we've seen this, at least in our lifetime, a few different times. But like you said, it's definitely not a mandate when the vice president has to do that. It's by the skin of their teeth is how I would put it. So this bill's basically dead in the water. What's going to happen next? Well, they wanted to just say, forget the replace, let's just repeal, and we'll figure out a replacement later on. That would effectively be taking health care away from American citizens and promising it to replace it. At some point, we'll figure it out. We'll get together. We'll get something out there. I think their plan is to get rid of it, and then when something can't get pushed through to replace it, blame the Democrats for them not having any health care. But I think the reverse is going to happen. I think if they were actually able to do that, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to. If they were actually able to do that, the Republicans would be labeled as a party that took health care away from millions of people. That's not going to help them in the midterm or the presidential elections the next 2 and 4 years. It's simply just not going to help at all.
No, that would seem to be a pretty foolhardy plan if the Republicans were to rush that through. Simply to repeal, to get their way, right? To undo history, to remove Obamacare from the record books, from the history books, simply for partisan purposes. That's unethical. It's immoral. It's putting party before country. And that is not what they've been sent to Washington to do.
No, it's really amazing. I feel like if I was a Republican or a Democrat, whenever you're voting for any kind of bill, I don't want to just pigeonhole one side, but if you're looking at a bill and this CBO score, which is nonpartisan, by the way, says this bill, if enacted, is basically going to screw over 10 to 20 million people. I mean, right there, it's easy enough to say no. I don't understand how these guys can be like, oh, no, it's good for the people, even though 24 million people are going to be without health care. It just blows my mind every single time I think about it.
Well, it's unbelievable to me how the Republicans think of painting the Democrats as the obstructionists when they spent the last 8 years doing that exact thing to President Obama.
And it's interesting that you see a lot of people saying today, a lot of the Trump supporters, what happened when people like their doctor and they said they could keep their doctor and then they couldn't keep it, or there were problems here or problems there. The difference is, and I've said this on past podcasts, I had problems with the ACA when it was passed, but it was done in good faith. President Obama really thought what he was saying was going to happen, and when it didn't happen, that sucks, and I didn't like it, obviously, but it wasn't their intent going in. The Republicans' bill, they know for a fact going in that this is all going to happen, and they want to pass it anyways, and that's a big difference, I think, between the two different bills. One is hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. The other one is knowing the worst and pushing it through anyways.
Well, it's important to understand exactly how our system of government works. You can say what you will about Obamacare. You can say all the failures that have happened with that, but you have to direct your criticism where it's actually due. President Obama wanted certain things of his health care plan that didn't get passed by Congress. It is Congress's job to actually write the legislation, pass it through both houses before it goes to the president to be signed. So, we must direct our frustration towards the people who had a hand in designing it with the flaws included.
So this morning, of course, Trump had a few tweets. As soon as I heard this was dead last night, I'm like, oh, here we go, 7 a.m. tweets. Didn't come until about 8:30 or so, so I was off by about an hour and a half. First, he tweeted out, we were let down by all of the Democrats and a few Republicans. Most Republicans were loyal, terrific, and worked really hard. We will return. So when he says, most Republicans are loyal, wasn't he the guy who said, I didn't ask for any kind of pledge of loyalty? That sounds like a guy who really wants these people to be loyal to him, or else he's going to blast you on social media.
Not to mention loyalty when it comes to an elected member of Congress. Loyalty should be reserved for the country, for your constituents, not for your party or the president.
Yeah, party comes last. Your constituents definitely come first. Then he came out and said that, as I always said, let Obamacare fail and come together and do a great health care plan. Stay tuned. He's been saying throughout the day, and we have some really terrific stuff coming down. Just wait. That's not what he said, though. If you look back, I was watching his 60-minute interview again today. He said, everybody's got to be covered. I'm going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes. Everyone is going to get taken care of much better than they're taken care of now. That's pretty much the opposite of what this healthcare bill would do. And if it surprises us that he was full of crap, well, again, it's our fault. We shouldn't be surprised by anything he does these days.
Right, exactly. Where does that 25, 30 million people that would lose their coverage fall into that? Everybody is going to get taken care of. I don't understand.
We like to push the idea that anybody can get their great health care. They just have to be able to afford it. But it's there for them to get if they wanted it. It's all nonsense. The good news here also is that it also sounds like this repeal without a replace is also dead on arrival. I think Mitch McConnell is still bluffing that they're going to have some kind of vote next week, but I don't think it's going to happen. Although with this kind of stuff, it changes by the minute. If suddenly they're telling specific senators from some specific states that maybe they'll get a little more money, for their opioid crisis, a little more money from Medicare here or there, maybe these people can be swayed, but I'm really hoping not. This is bad legislation, and it's even been brought up by a couple senators now that maybe we go back to the drawing board, we go through the committee process. Basically, we do what we're supposed to do, and then maybe we can get something good to put out there and maybe fix some of the holes in the current legislation. And that's what they should have done from the beginning. Go through the normal process like you're supposed to do it. Don't just ram something through just so you can be the one to say, I got rid of Obamacare.
Imagine that, doing what you're supposed to do. It's a novel concept for Congress.
Too hard. I like just being a whiny baby and pushing things through. So that's one ongoing story. Of course, the other ongoing story has to do with Russia. And Kevin, I have to say I'm very mad at Lauren Michaels. SNL lied to us. They always led us to believe that Don Jr. was the smart one and Eric was the dummy, but I'm starting to think the opposite is true. This has been playing out over the last week or two, that the New York Times reported that during the 2016 election, Donald Trump Jr. sat down with a member. I'm never gonna get this right. It's a Russian lawyer named Natalia Veselnitskaya, I think is how you pronounce it. She's a Russian lawyer. They met in Trump Tower, and reportedly she has ties with the Kremlin. And not only was Don Jr. there, his brother-in-law, Kushner, the guy who used to say was the best of the worst. I don't even think I can say that anymore. And also the campaign manager at that time, Paul Manafort.
Connecticut's own Paul Manafort.
Where's he from? I think
New Britain, hard-hitting New Britain. Where was he hard-hitting with the Russians?
Golden Hurricanes. Golden Hurricanes, Golden Showers. Maybe that's why he was working with Donald Trump. Don Jr. was going around telling everybody that he was there to talk about an adoption program, although nobody really believed that. And, of course, the Times reported that he wasn't there to talk about the adoption program. He was talking to them because supposedly they had damaging information on Hillary. Jr. basically knew that they had him, and he ended up confirming and releasing all his emails on Twitter. It wasn't good. So that's where we were at that point. What do you think of it up to there? Not good.
No, not good at all. And of course, the party line, the standard here for the Trump team is to lie, then backtrack, and then act like it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we didn't meet with anybody from Russia. Okay, we did, but it was about adoptions. Okay, maybe it wasn't about adoptions, but everybody does it. The story gets wackier as we keep going through this. So the meeting was arranged by a music publicist named Rob Goldstone at the request of a Russian pop star whose real estate developer father helped sponsor the Miss Universe pageant, which, of course, was owned by Donald Trump, and signed a deal with Trump to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. And Goldstein told Jr. in an email that the offer of incriminating evidence about Hillary was part of Russia's scheme to hurt the candidacy of Hillary and aid Trump's. Now, here's the deal, Kevin, my friend. When you're going to do this kind of shady stuff, don't leave a paper trail. Pick up the phone. You might be bugged. Use a carrier pigeon. Meet in public, in person. Do not leave a trail that can be, left like breadcrumbs for Hansel and Gretel to find, and because that will bite you in the butt every single time.
Listen, I'm still hung up on Russian pop star because whenever I think of, foreign country pop stars, all that comes to mind is Robin Sparkles. And I know...
Let's go to the mall.
You're a big fan, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it seems to be the way of the world in the 21st century that people don't communicate, over the phone or in person anymore, face to face. It's all through emails, Facebook and Twitter posts, text messages. There's a lot of positives to that, but it also leaves a trail behind. And when you're trying to keep things below deck so that the world doesn't find out, you might not want to put it in writing.
I mean, have they not been paying attention to the news? Have they not been paying attention to why their father is in big trouble with this whole Russian conspiracy thing? People are getting hacked. No information is safe. Rather than put it all on your computer and just wait for somebody from some country to dig it out, go get a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or something and just talk face to face. Although I guess if this person is in Russia, it's a little more difficult.
So perhaps this lends some credence to the idea that the Trump family does feel that they are above everybody else, that this doesn't apply to them, that they can do whatever they want, and that there's going to be no consequences or repercussions.
I without a doubt, that's true. They just imagine any other presidency. If you add up just this alone to Bush or to Obama or to Clinton, it would have been an complete mess. To the Trump administration, it's just another day in the office. Like, no one really bats. It just go, there they go again, Trump. It's amazing what they can get by with people just backing them and saying, oh, it's fake news, fake news. It's not fake news. They said they didn't meet with Russia, and now they're saying they did. And I love how Donald Trump Jr.'s role is like, well, don't be mean to me. Everybody else does it. And then Daddy Trump followed up with, most politicians would have gone to meetings like the one Don Jr. attended in order to get info on an opponent. That's politics. No, it's not politics. In 2000, someone sent the Gore campaign the Bush, I think it was his prep book for one of the debates, and they called the FBI and didn't use it. One, because it could be a plant to get them in trouble, and two, because it's the wrong thing to do. So no, not everybody would do this. It goes back, and I've tweeted this out to Donald Jr. My mother used to say when I was a kid, no, everybody else did it. Well, if everybody else jumped off a bridge, would you do that too? Well, obviously no. You can't blame I did this, but everybody else does it, so it's okay. That's not true, and it's a stupid analogy.
Yeah, to quote Billy Madison, business ethics. There are ethics in business, there are ethics in politics, and clearly this is outside of that realm.
We're starting to show our age, though, I think, with the Billy. It's amazing that's an old movie now. It doesn't seem like an old movie. The kids today are like, oh, Adam Sandler? Yeah, he's that old guy from Netflix movies. It's crazy. So people are just going to keep saying collusion with Russia is fake news, blah, blah, blah. It's really kind of sad that it's right in front of us. This is just going to get worse and worse. They found the eighth person who's in the meeting today. Again, I think it was another Russian business developer. But why were you meeting with people from Russia? People ask, well, what if somebody from London had helped Obama? You'd have to put things into context. The country does matter. This is the country that the facts say they tried to hack us. They didn't try to hack us. They did successfully hack us, and now suddenly they want to help you get elected. If this was Canada getting some information, Canada's not doing what Russia's doing, and they're not as shady as a country, and we don't have any proof.
Here comes Robin Sparkles again.
The Mounties are coming at us, throwing Canadian bacon at us. It's not the same. So the fact that, one, they lied about Russia, and two, that it's Russia at all, that makes all of the difference. Putin is just sitting there laughing and with his shirt off while he's shooting tigers, and probably thinks it's all hilarious.
I don't know what to make of any of this. I know I say that all the time, but really, it's you can't make this stuff up, and it just continues to get better and better, or worse and worse, I should say, as the days and the months go on.
It really is stranger than fiction. And maybe we're not the only people thinking of this, because yesterday we did get a new poll from ABC News Washington Post, and it was not good news for Donald Trump or the Trump administration. According to this poll, only 36% of Americans approve of the job that Trump is doing in the White House. They had a poll actually that came out similarly on the 100-day mark on the White House, and they had him at 42%. So between then and now, he's lost 6%, which is not good. 36% is, I think, the lowest of any president in the modern age at that time. It's ugly. It's very ugly. And I mean, to give some context, 58% of the people said that they disapprove of the job he's doing. Can it go lower? Is there a bottom? Is the floor going to drop out, or is this kind of the bottom for as low it can go?
Yeah, I don't know. Trump tweeted this week that his approval rating is, to quote, not bad at this time, which PolitiFact has rated this as false. And if we look at some other polls, according to Gallup, the average approval rating at the 6-month mark is 62%. And to give a frame of reference, Richard Nixon had a 58% approval rating at this point, Kennedy 75%. George W. Bush was 59%. The Republican hero Ronald Reagan was at 62% at this point in time. 36%. That's not bad at this time.
And people like to kind of point out, we know what this Rasmussen poll came out recently, and it had him at like 42% or 44% or something. And guess what? Rasmussen is not good. I like talking about different polls out there. 538 did a whole write-up on the legitimacy of different polls and whether they're a good poll or bad poll. Are they accurate? And the ABC News Washington Post poll was put down as a A+, one of 6 out of 372 polls that got an A+. It skewed slightly to the left, like 0.6%, which is really nothing. And then the Rasmussen poll was given a C+. There were 182 polls ranked better than that, and it skews to the right by 2 points. So the two really can't be compared because one is much better than the other one. But again, polls don't matter unless it shows that Trump's doing well. Then obviously it does, and it'll tell everybody about it. People like to point out, well, these are the same polls that got the 2016 election wrong. But if you go back and look at a lot of these polls, predicting that Hillary was going to win, and she has a 99% chance of winning some of these things, but most of them had within like a 23% chance for Trump, which was in statistical margin of error that he ended up winning. This isn't fake news, no matter how many times his supporters want to point out and say it is.
Right. Obviously none of these are concrete. They're not 100%, but certainly they give an idea of the attitude people are taking towards this president. But to Trump's delight, I'm surprised I haven't heard more about this. According to a Newsweek article this week, a Bloomberg national poll has found that Trump's favorability is at 41% right now, compared to Hillary Clinton's at 39%. Question being, why the hell are we still talking about Hillary Clinton?
Well, here's what Trump supporters don't seem to understand. The opposite of Trump is not Hillary. The opposite of Trump is not Trump. And
the opposite of Trump is human decency. But we'll leave that there.
But you can say, I don't like Trump. I like anybody else other than Trump. Hillary lost. She's been off doing her own thing. She hasn't been campaigning. She hasn't been out there in the public eye. The president is this slow. There's no war going on. The economy isn't in a recession. There's no major crisis. Can you imagine if something bad actually were to happen to our country, how far he would fall down? And we're in a place where his supporters are trying to point out that no, his approval was actually a 43% approval rating, and that's good. Even their best case scenario is horrible. It's really an insane time. Although it does make me feel a little better that some other people are starting to see the light, and that maybe I'm not as crazy, or we're not as crazy as I think we are every once in a while.
Yeah, I got a 43 on a test once. You know what I got? I got an F.
Yeah. I got a lot of 79s, and I could never convince them to push it up to an 80. It was very, very hard for me. One of the things we wanted to talk as we get towards the end of today's podcast is Trump's health. Now, I want to point out that this may not be fair, and people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I could always go on a diet myself, but I've seen an increasing number of articles written about Trump's health. Just this morning, I was reading one in Politico. I read one in USA Today, and the main issues I like to point out is that he's 71. He's in probably the most stressful job in the entire world. He's overweight. He doesn't exercise. He loves fast food and red meat. He spends hours a day just laying on the couch watching cable news. He doesn't get enough sleep. Now, okay, half of those you could probably apply to me too. So I'm not saying this stuff to be mean at all, but is this something that we should be worried about and that Trump should be worried about?
Well, as a human being, if my health were in that condition, and if I looked at health and exercise the way he does, I'd be concerned. But, more importantly, I think we should be concerned about this. A number of news outlets, including CNN and Britain's The Guardian, have reported on a May 8th New Yorker article that highlighted Trump's bizarre theory on exercise in general, which is to the tune of he believes that energy and humans have a finite amount of energy, kind of like a battery. and that the more you use it, it wears it down, and eventually the human body runs out, and therefore why exercise? It's actually going to kill you. Keep in mind that this comes from a 19th century theory, that arose because of the Industrial Revolution, looking at humans as machines, looking for efficient uses of energy and the equipment that was being used in industrialization, et cetera, et cetera. So he's using a 200-year-old ideology here.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm a big comic book nerd. There's been multiple storylines where the Flash, his powers are killing him, and if he actually moves fast, he'll get rid of all his energy and die. Yeah, that's great when I'm reading in a comic book, not when the President of the United States is thinking that. It's pretty ridiculous. And if you look at his most recent predecessors, yeah, Obama smoked, but you saw him out there playing basketball, and I mean, I've seen that video of him working out. He's insane. The form he has when lifting weights is kind of ridiculous, but I'll give him a pass because at least he was actually lifting weights. I read W. Bush ran 7-minute miles when he did 5Ks. Even Bubba Clinton there, he would run to get rid of that Big Mac weight. Was he running through your town or just walking around?
Actually, he was doing his other form of physical activity, which was bowling. Bubba was an avid bowler. And he came to the bowling alley on a campaign stop back in 1992 when I was just a young lad. I was actually had the chance to get there early. My parents brought me down to the 10-pin down the hill from the house because Governor Clinton of Arkansas was coming to town. And I had recently been to Arkansas because my uncle lives there at that time and, had an Arkansas Razorbacks hat on. He picked me out right from the front row and said, hey there, I got a daughter about your age. So I was compared to Chelsea Clinton, at least at one point in my life when we were like 10 or 12 years old. But yeah, he was bowling.
Yeah, and then we saw him, 20 years later?
10 years later, I believe. Yeah, it was about 10 years in between my chances to meet President Clinton, and neither time was he actually in office.
And I shook his hand and then wanted to immediately wash it because I didn't know where it had been. So, yeah, I'm getting back to the point of the articles we were discussing. Americans are increasingly overweight, and I know that's a struggle firsthand, but Trump is the most unfit president in modern times. He should, for his health, for the health of the nation, turn this around. I mean, he could just get a treadmill while he's watching Fox News and freaking out, just walk and dictate his tweets to Dan Scavino, wherever the hell's standing next to him. I understand he's got a lot going. Well, I would say he has a lot going on, but I don't think he does. I think he wastes a lot of time.
It would seem so, and Lord knows he's got people in his ear telling him what to say. So how much of that is original thought, I don't know. But
and of course, I go to bed super late, so I'm always cranky. I don't get enough sleep. One of these articles pointed out that lack of sleep leads to diminished cognition and anxiety. Do you want the dude with his finger on the button to be cranky because he didn't get enough sleep the night before?
We know I actually had a student this year who researched this very topic for his senior capstone project. And from all the research and reporting that was done by him, there is certainly a direct correlation between sleep deprivation and anxiety and cognition. So, yeah, I'm not sure that I want him with his finger on the big red button.
Let's be honest, on good days, he's pretty high strung. So when he gets no sleep, I can only imagine. And let's not forget, remember when he was running for president, he had that sham of a doctor who somehow claimed that Trump would be like the most fit president ever if elected, and he's like in perfect physical health. That was the most ridiculous thing ever. I mean, he shouldn't have been elected based on that just there, because that's such a lie.
Right. He actually touted the idea that he was more fit to handle the demands of the presidency than Hillary Clinton. Said that, how can you stand up to groups like ISIS, other international threats? So she doesn't have the physical stamina and capacity to do it. That he was the beacon of physical fitness to be able to handle such a situation.
Yeah, I mean, this whole conversation, maybe it's inappropriate about, an average person on the street. But again, when you're the most powerful person in the world, the leader of the free world, I think these are things that are fair game and worth bringing up. So before we get to Kevin's Corner, I know you were telling me today you were reading an article about how, again, Trump, I don't know if he's lying to himself or just plain out lying about the amount of legislation that he's passed in the last 6 months or so. How much did he say he passed?
Well, we know that it's in Trump's nature to brag about his accomplishments, and he has stated that he has signed more bills into law than any other president, except maybe a few. Words don't matter here. But anyway, just to break down some of Trump's actual bills, President Trump has signed 42 bills since taking office, 15 of which reversed Obama regulations, 14 of which were ceremonial and routine lawmaking, and 5 bureaucratic tweaks, and 4 space and science bills, and 4 veterans bills. Not exactly hard-hitting legislation. And, as you've said in the past, perhaps he believes that the executive orders he's been signing are bills. I'm not sure.
And a lot of those executive orders aren't even successful either when it comes to a lot of the travel ban. This was his signature piece of legislation, the Trump Care bill stuff, and he didn't seem to really care about it. And then it's going down in flames because he's not holding town halls, he's not talking to people, he's not going to rallies in the states that are going to be killed by this. So he doesn't really seem to care. So I think probably we can expect the same stuff from the tax reform legislation whenever that bothers to be put out. I mean, all we've seen so far in the last few months is a couple bullet points on a piece of paper. So yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are really pissed off that they're not going to be saving lots of money. Those are all the millionaires and the trillionaires. But Trump is doing his best to do the bidding of a select few in this country, and he's failing spectacularly.
Well, you do know that law he signed back on June 6th, the Department of Homeland Security SAVE Act, which required the Department of Homeland Security to make improvements to managing its vehicle fleet.
So what do we got for Kevin's Corner this week?
Well, Jesse, we've been on a hiatus because of my travels, and during my recent trip, I was able to make a stop in Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, a place that I had not visited since I was a frivolous 8th grader. The town holds so much of our nation's early history, as the likes of Washington, Jefferson, Mason, and Monroe once strolled its streets. As my family and I sat in the House of Burgesses in the replicated Colonial Capitol building, which sits on the foundation of its original predecessor, I was awestruck by the events which took place on these hallowed grounds of democracy. The vital freedoms which stand firm in our Constitution were first addressed by the members of the body housed in the very location that I was now walking the halls of. As our tour was reaching its conclusion, we were reminded by our historic interpreter, who was clearly impassioned by the connections between our foundations of government and that which takes place today, that, quoting the Spider-Man series, with great power comes great responsibility. Our government is one that, despite who is in power, is run by the people and for the people. It is our responsibility to ensure that our republic lives on, that our government meets the needs of our society above all else. It is essential for us to remember that our most sacred document begins with the words, "We the people." We can ill afford to look the other way when our national ideals are being compromised.
You had me at Spider-Man, Kevin.
I thought you'd like that.
Wonderful. All right. Before we wrap up today, just want to let everybody know that we will definitely be back next week. I think we're both going to have some exciting news to share at the beginning of the podcast next week. Some fun things are happening in Connecticut, and I think it'll be fun to share with everybody on the podcast. So until then, Kevin, as always, it's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you then.
Later.